This is the SaveHeart Stories podcast. Real-life stories of lives saved and changed due to sudden cardiac arrest and the availability of life-saving AED devices. Because one life lost is too many, these stories matter. Here's your host, Dave Fritzsche.
Good morning and welcome to SaveHeart Stories. I'm Dave Fritzsche, your host, and we have a great show today because we have a great guest. Bob Stickel is the president and founder of LifeSavers, Inc. Since 1992. He founded LifeSavers way back then to increase the number of AEDs placed for the public to use and to increase the number of people trained in CPR and AED use. Bob, welcome to the show today.
Hey, Dave, how are you?
I'm fantastic. In transparency, I've known Bob for about 25 years, since my early days at DefibTech. It's been an honor to know him, not just from the business side, but also as a mentor. He's been a pioneer in the industry for what he's accomplished at LifeSavers. But I know it didn't always start that way, Bob. You know, you started as an entrepreneur in a small business after being an EMT, which I think you've been now for about 33 years. And we'd love it if you could share a little bit about your background in starting LifeSavers with that background as an EMT, and then to where you are today.
Sure, Dave. I started LifeSavers, like you said, back in 1992. Back then I was volunteer for the Bloomfield Volunteer Emergency Squad. And I probably, in my 10-year ride of it, like you said, I've been EMT for over 30 years, but I rode actively for about 17 years. It was probably on 300 cardiac arrest calls. All but 2 or 3 were in the home, and only once did I see a bystander start CPR. So, when I'm out there teaching, I ask people, how many people you think I saved out of 300? And, they'll say, 150, 200. Last week, someone said 275, but it was 3 people left the hospital neurologically intact. How many people did we get a pulse back? Probably about 30% of those people, 90 people. But unfortunately, since they didn't get immediate CPR, they had brain damage and didn't survive ultimately. So, that led me to believe one night when I started LifeSavers, me and another gentleman that started it, he got out about 6 years into this, but we were actually going for our MBAs at Seton Hall, and we decided, people used to call emergency squad companies, want training. We said we could do it in the evening, and they said, well, our people here during the day. So that didn't work too well. So that's where LifeSavers was born, actually in a bar, with that reason, to save more lives. And, we did it. In this past year, we're an American Heart Association training center. Our instructors, we have about 800 instructors affiliated with us now. We trained over 88,000 people in CPR. And since I started with the DefibTech, we've sold close to 40,000, placed 40,000 AEDs out there. So,
That's unbelievable. And listen, Bob won't tell you this because he's very humble, but he's been incredibly successful. LifeSavers has been incredibly successful in what he set out to do back in 1992. I know you've been a certified instructor, as you mentioned. I think it's been 31 years now. You've implemented successful AED programs and CPR and AED emergency response training for organizations large and small, from Fortune 500 to local businesses there in New Jersey and everywhere in between. And one of the biggest things, really been a pioneer in administering some of the largest and most successful and earliest statewide public access AED programs. Places like Arkansas and Florida, Idaho, Louisiana. What am I missing? Of course, New Jersey, New Mexico,
Utah, New Mexico, New Hampshire, Maine.
See, he will tell you, but it's been an unbelievable growth story that I've been fortunate to see almost firsthand, starting about, 9 years after he founded it, but for the last 25 years. And he's respected, and they're respected in the industry as really a leader in doing all of the above. So that's why we're so excited to talk with you today. And so tell us something about the challenges that you did face as an entrepreneur that you started out. AEDs were just becoming a little bit more known for public use. And again, you were a driver of helping to educate people about that. But what were some of the challenges early on that you faced in building life?
The biggest challenge early on was the cost of AEDs and acceptance and the concern about liability. Back then, a LifePak 500 was about $3,500. Then DefibTech came around, and their retail price was $14.95. So that made a big change of cost, getting the AEDs down. Unfortunately, the challenge has been since COVID now, we've seen a 35% increase in the price of AEDs. Really in an environment where I thought AED prices should be coming down, make an affordable home unit. 78% of cardiac arrests occur in the home, and that's where AEDs need to be. And unfortunately, we're going in the other direction now. I see as one of the biggest challenges. They really do belong in a home. They belong more public access, which we're seeing. Government regulations are driving that, but that's not always the best way to do that. I'd rather go into community and say, you need these in your parks. Most recently, I do a lot of volunteer work in my town as far as donating AEDs and training our coaches every year, training our summer camp help, people in the schools, people in the community. We offer free training through our library in town. In that class, it just came up. There's an AED in a school, but the baseball league, the T-ball league uses that school on weekends, so they don't have access to that AED. Right. So, we're starting to push with the superintendent of schools, who's new, and I think he's very receptive to it. But, I read his letter. He has some of the same concerns we had 30 years ago still. So I don't think we've done much to people understand about the liability. Liability is not having the AED there. So I think we have a lot more challenges now. There's been a lot of consolidation in our industry, and I don't know if that's even good, because you don't have the small companies like myself out in the community that can really work with people.
I'm glad you brought that up, Bob. It's really a paradox in my mind. You've had this great awareness, increased awareness because of pioneers like you and others. Manufacturers and not-for-profits and service providers are working together more closely than ever before. That's all a great thing. We both know, and many people know, that there's more and more AEDs that are being placed. Yet, a couple things. Number one, the survival rate of sudden cardiac arrest is still pretty much stagnant at around 10%. Might be a little higher, might be a little lower in some areas, but it really hasn't budged. And the question is, then what do we need to do to change it? You brought up some great points. AED pricing is too high. Like most technologies, as things have been out for a while and there's technological changes and other things, usually the pricing comes down. I think that was starting to happen. And then you mentioned COVID kind of threw everyone for, a loop, so to speak, in many ways. But there's still this paradox of more and more AEDs being placed, but not more people being saved. So exactly. Home use is number one. You and I have been working now for quite a while, which I'm, honored to and excited to work with you on, which is the outdoor placement of AEDs, that new frontier. What else needs to be done to change that besides pricing? What else can we do?
Unfortunately, I think this industry, when I started this back in 1992, actually, I believe it was about 1994, I was at a ECCU conference, and there was a reception that night, and I was sitting at a table with a doctor and his wife, and we're talking about CPR, and he got up to get his wife something, and I said to her, who's your husband? And she said, Dr. Peter Saffer. And he was one of the pioneers in CPR. And he came back, a very humble man, and said to me, you're going to charge people to teach them CPR? That whole concept was crazy. Today, we have a lot more people out there teaching CPR. We have a lot more companies out there selling AEDs. But unfortunately, I feel in the industry, everyone has their little niche and their little agenda, and nobody's no longer working together for the point of saving lives. I always try to remind the people in my office, that's what we're here to do, is save lives. It's not that you're shipping an AED, not that you're an order taker, not that you're an instructor, but at the end of the day, it's to save lives. That's our whole goal. But I just feel everybody has their little niche now of what you need to have for an AED program, and it's really confusing the end user. I think we really have to go back to when this was born, and the grassroots, and not everybody have their little agenda.
Sure. And, some of that I think is unavoidable if you've got different people with different businesses. That's the nature of the beast. But you brought up something that was also very important, and that is there has been a lot of consolidation in the AED industry. But who we work with at SaveHeart by HeartNation are the leading regional, they may have national coverage like you do, no question about it.
Right.
But national, leading regional and local players have local customers out in the community. It's great that there's more AEDs being placed and shipped by big, distribution centers, but that personal touch and those local connections are really what you've always been about and what we're about as well. So I think there's a little bit of a resurgence in that because I think people recognize that, but it needs to happen more in my mind.
Oh, I agree. I think as we saw the consolidation now, people are looking for that service. People still need their handheld, on what to do, how to run a program, because, there's not an AED made in this world that's going to save a life. It's the trained person who's going to use that AED in an emergency. And I think that's the key, making sure we have people trained, understanding what an AED is used for. Because every day I teach and stuff I hear, I was just up. The other issue is survival rates are so low in inner cities, and that's because we have nobody in those inner city areas to train. This past week I was up in Syracuse, training in a high school, some of the vocational program, electricians, the construction industry. And, you're in a city where at most major cities, you have a delay in EMS response. If it's traffic, if it's the vertical response time in large buildings, the time people take to call, recognize there's an emergency. But, it was nice to teach some of these young kids in high school, and we're trying to push more high school programs in New Jersey. New Jersey has a law that you need to pass CPR training to graduate from high school, but you don't need to be certified. And certification, a lot of people say it's just a piece of paper, but it gives a curriculum that these kids will learn. It gives them, these kids I taught in Syracuse, came up to me, said, "Thank you for teaching us something today. Now I'm certified." It meant something. A little piece of paper meant something to them. They earned something at the end of the day. And I think that's important. We got to get more of this into schools. Because these are the people who are going to be when there is a cardiac arrest at a home. Training them, training our seniors, our senior population in towns is important because, again, more cardiac arrest calls. So,
yeah. Well, you mentioned we've done a little bit more work ourselves in the inner city, and there's no question there's a different focus or lack thereof, I should say, on areas like that. And at the same time, I've seen some advances there, but also with regards to rural. The fact of the matter is, as you and I know, sudden cardiac arrest does not discriminate. It affects people of all ages, either sex, obviously, even people that might otherwise seemingly look healthy. The fact of the matter is it's called sudden cardiac arrest for a reason. And because of response times, even as good as our first responders are, it's going to take usually 7, 8, 10, 12 minutes to arrive on scene. With cardiac arrest, the 3-minute rule. Can you go from the victim of cardiac arrest, the largest natural cause of death in the United States, to an AED and back within 3 minutes? And that just isn't the case. That's why AEDs need to be placed more. If you're in an inner city or a city in general, like you mentioned, urban environment, you've got challenges there with traffic or vertical response. Rural, you've got other challenges, paramedics or just AEDs, and even labor responders might be, many minutes away. So I think looking at all those in their own environment, but realizing the common thread is more people need to be trained, to your point. They need to be more aware of cardiac arrest, and there need to be more AEDs in those places on a combined program to save more lives.
Yeah, we need that person to be resuscitated before the first responder gets on the scene. That's the short window we have. You can't be standing there waiting for the first responders to get there. It's just not physically possible.
It's just too late for cardiac arrest.
Yep.
You're going to lose them. Yeah, no question about it. I know that there's, again, you and I think about what else needs to change. A lot of people are thinking that way. I do think there's an increased collaboration that's going to pay dividends. Again, that there needs to be some continued focus there. But what are some of the good things that you are seeing out there?
Well,
technology or trends, or
we're seeing survival. We get somewhere from 1 to 3 phone calls a month where I'll call our non-traditional rescuers, either a corporate save or in a school, where an AED was deployed and people were saved. So, I mean, there is positive. We're starting to see the survival rate, but, as a whole, it's not affecting that 4 to 8, 10%. But, we're seeing CPR started more and more. And I think that's important. I think there's a lot to be done by the manufacturers. I haven't seen many things new in the industry. There's some new products out there, but again, some of that stuff is going back to some of the old technology of recharging batteries, which we got away from, and just having people understand and maintain these AEDs. We get phone calls, oh, my battery is expiring, it's chirping, and you tell them to look at their pads, and their pads are 5 years old or expired 3 years, So more and more of that, of maintaining the AEDs, people understanding them and not just putting them on the wall and say we're safe now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's no question that you need to have not just the AED, but the people to know that it's there and that it's maintained, to your point. One of the things that I've seen as a positive trend in the industry, we're trying to get more involved in it. And it's a bit of a personal connection for me. Sharing with the audience, Bob and I were working at a trade show. Gosh, it had to be going back 20 years probably. And thought I felt a little odd. And, here I am selling AEDs, and I'm traveling around the world, building DefibTech's, distributor base, and working with people like Bob and just loving every minute of it. And, I had sort of an uncomfortable feeling in my chest, and, having Bob there, of course, calmed me down. Well, a couple of years later, I was diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Luckily for me, it isn't, it's at the low end of the risk spectrum, but it's not something that, was an urgent thing right away. I get checked every year, and luckily the thickness of my heart muscle hasn't increased. But one of the things we're getting involved in now because of that is the move to screen more youths in high schools and things of that nature, because, a lot of people, again, especially in youth, they don't know, their parents don't know what the family's heart history is. Kids can be healthy and be an athlete, but they may have a pre-existing condition. So these heart screenings actually can flag some things to look into, or even, diagnose things that are already there. So I think it's important, and we're proud as HeartNation to help sponsor some of those things that go on. But we cover all into the spectrum. To your point, it's all about saving more lives. That's really what this is supposed to be about in the first place. And that's why it's an honor working with you on things we've worked on for 25 years, but now especially on this new frontier of outdoor AEDs. What do you see as the future of that movement? Some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that, as we look at placing more AEDs outside.
Well, I think I think everyone is looking at, placing them at ball fields. But, I was just down a large pharmaceutical company that is a customer of ours, and we were going down. We do AED inspections every year for them. And, where I had to walk from the parking lot, the first row was handicap parking. The second row was if I have a hybrid vehicle. The third row was the charging stations. So I'm out in the fourth row with my gas guzzler. And I said to the gentleman I was working with there, they have an outside contract that maintains their buildings. And I said, you really need an AED out there. You have call boxes out there. So you already have power out there. We really need to put some AEDs out here. So, well, that's a great idea, because we're going to be building a parking garage too, which is going to even be further away. Because I said, by the time somebody gets out there with an AED, you're looking at 2-3 minutes already. If someone even in the parking lot thinks quick enough to call through those phones, which goes to your security desk, versus just calling 911 and your security detail doesn't even know what something happened to respond with an AED. So I think there's a lot of places, I think of parking lots and shopping malls, downtown centers, where there's, maybe a row of stores downtown, putting them out in a public place. So if something happens in one of those stores, if they're strategically placed, somebody could get to that AED and back to the patient. I think we're doing more and more to train people, and that's important. But we really have to get. There's not enough AEDs out there. We haven't scratched the surface.
Yeah, well, and that's why it's so exciting to work with someone like you and LifeSavers, because when you've got an organization that's been around for 35 years, or that, my math's correct, or more, and has a reputation for helping customers, large and small, implementing some of the largest state programs like we talked about, as you guys have done, then people start to say, you know what, these guys know what they're talking about. You've got a force of, certified EMTs working with you. You've got a great staff that's focused on customer service. But like you say, it's always about saving lives. And I think when people like Bob Stickel and LifeSavers start talking about the need to place more AEDs and where to place them, including outdoors, I think people start to take notice. And that's what I'm excited about in general, and certainly working with you, Bob. So really, we're lucky all to be able to listen to Bob and talk with him today. if people want to learn more about LifeSavers, Bob, what can they do? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, they can go on our website, LifeSavers with an S, Inc.com, or they can call us at 973-244-9111. If you call here Monday through Friday, Eastern Time, 9 to 5, I guarantee a human will pick up the phone. I don't really believe in voicemail, and that's not what people want. They want to talk to someone. If you're in northern New Jersey area here, you want to take a CPR class, or even if you're in other parts of the country, we have instructors. They're independent business, but like I said, all over the country, so we can put you in place as someone who's going to give you a quality course. And, even if we sell the DefibTech brand, but if you have other brands or you just have a question about AED, we're there to help you. We're not just there to help our clients. Anyone has a question, we'll try to help you out.
Absolutely. You've done that for 3 decades, Bob. Thank you for being our guest today on SaveHeart Stories. I look forward to continuing to work with you. And again, best of luck and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dave. And I look forward to working with you and all the things you're doing to get these out and outdoors. And I think we can make a lot of strides to move forward and get these AEDs out there. I'm
looking forward to it. Thanks again to our guest, Bob Stickel. This is Dave Fritzsche, your host here at SaveHeart Stories, reminding you to tune in and listen wherever you listen to your podcast. Give us a like if you like what you've heard here today. And until then, as we always sign off, be grateful every day and talk to you next time here on SaveHeart Stories. Take care.
This has been the SaveHeart Stories podcast with Dave Fritzsche, AED industry veteran and founder of SaveHeart by HeartNation. To learn more about how outdoor AEDs can keep your community safer, call 312-953-6928 or email Dave at saveheart.life. Proudly made in the USA, SaveHeart's highly visible, alarmed, lighted, temperature-controlled, and 24/7 monitored outdoor cabinets provide immediate visibility and access to life-saving AEDs. Stop the bleed kits, Narcan, and other emergency supplies. They are ideal for parks, athletic fields, trails, schools and universities, marinas, business districts, and any outdoor locations where people congregate. Click on www.saveheart.life for more information. SaveHeart Stories is a presentation of SaveHeart by HeartNation.